Good afternoon, everybody. We're going to get started in a couple of moments. Please stay tuned. We're going to make sure everybody gets to log on. Hi, everybody. We're just going to give just a couple more minutes, a couple more moments to let everybody sign on, and then we'll get started. All right, everybody, we see people still logging on. So just a couple more seconds and then we're going to kick it off. All right, well, welcome everyone. We're excited to kick off today's webinar, Using Your Virtual Exchange Skills for Career Success. Today's webinar was created and is being brought to you by the Stevens Initiative, which is an effort that supported your virtual exchange experience. You might not have heard about the Stevens Initiative before, or you might have heard about it, but you might not know what it is fully. The Stevens Initiative is an international effort to build global competence for young people in the United States and the Middle East and North Africa by growing and enhancing the field of virtual exchange, online, international, and collaborative learning. The Stevens Initiative is sponsored by the U.S. Department of State and is administered by the Aspen Institute. And we support many different virtual exchange programs, including the one that you participated in. We are excited to provide today's webinar for alumni of these programs. Today, you'll hear from a couple of different people, one of whom is myself. My name is Kyle Kassler, and I am a program associate here at the Stevens Initiative, focusing on alumni engagement. Later in the webinar, we'll also hear from my colleague, Haley Lewis, a program associate with the Stevens Initiative, who focuses on communications and events. And so what are we going to do today? Well, we'll go through a couple of different things in today's webinar. First, we'll have a brief introduction where we'll talk about the Stevens Initiative Alumni Engagement Program, looking at some current resources that we have for you, our Stevens Initiative alumni. And then we're going to talk about virtual exchange skills for career readiness. We'll talk about why this is important, transferable skills and skills from your exchange. We want to talk about your goals and how your skills can help you reach those goals, and then specific examples of how your exchange experience will help you reach those goals, including how to use your experience on applications for graduate school and college, how to include your experience on your resume, and how to include your experience when you discuss yourself during an interview. And we'll share some more resources also. At the end, we also plan on having a question and answer period. So if you have any questions through today's webinar, please use the Q&A feature below to send a question in. My colleague Haley will look through the questions and will ask me some at the end of the webinar. So let's get started. The Stevens Initiative is excited about our commitment to engage the alumni of its supported virtual exchange program. There are over 28,000 young people in the United States, the Middle East, and North Africa that have participated in our virtual exchanges. We hope to build on the knowledge, skills, and experiences that alumni gained during virtual exchange programs. We want to accomplish multiple goals listed here on this slide to help our alumni continue to develop and succeed after their virtual exchanges. We also have some resources that you can use right now. You can check out our website, stevensinitiative.org, where we host information on our programs and on our impact. You can also connect with us on social media to read about our programs and to contribute to the conversations about our work. You can also make sure you are registered as a Stevens Initiative alum. You can just follow the link written out here, which is bit.ly/Stevens alumni, and fill out a form if you haven't registered already. Again, that link is bit.ly/Stevens alumni. We also love to hear about the Stevens Initiative alumni who use their virtual exchange experience to achieve success. We created a resource that shows you how to write a story about your success and gives instructions on how you can share that story with us. You can find that along with the worksheet for today's webinar, linked in the email you received with the announcement for today. We plan to have regular opportunities like today's webinar to support our alumni. Follow us on social media and check your emails for updates and upcoming opportunities. Now on to today's featured content. We are going to explore the skills you developed during your virtual exchange. We're going to talk about transferable skills and how you can communicate about those skills to accomplish your future professional goals, like getting into university or graduate school, or when you are trying to apply for a job. This content was created specifically for you, our alumni. We worked with the career readiness professional, Caroline Lee, pictured here, to develop a presentation specifically for alumni of virtual exchange programs supported by the Stevens Initiative. So all of this content should be directly applicable to you. First off, we should think about, why are we talking about this topic? A big problem facing young people today is the lack of the ability to explain how skills and abilities translate to career opportunities. In simpler words, young people have trouble getting jobs because it is difficult to explain how their experience makes them a good candidate for an opportunity. Regardless of your age, your background, or your goals, you will have to successfully explain what you want your next steps to be and what has led you to that next step. This is really hard to do, and that's why this alumni webinar is being offered, to help you with that challenge. In today's webinar, we'll talk about those transferable skills and why they're important, help you think about your personal skills, and help you explain how your transferable skills from your virtual exchange connect to your goal. So what are skills? Skills are why you get hired for a job. If you look at any job description, you'll see a laundry list of skills, just a whole bunch. If your skills match what is in the job description, you'll likely get called for an interview. The entire job search process is built around trying to figure out if you have the necessary skills to do the job. Your skills are what you bring to the table and why the employer is willing to pay you for your labor. So if that's what skills are, then what are transferable skills? Transferable skills are skills that you learned in one experience, but will help you during your next experience. So for example, during your virtual exchange, you learned communication skills. The next job you want lists communication skills on the announcement. Well, you need to know how to explain that your virtual exchange gave you communication skills or improved your communication skills that make you qualified for that job. Many job candidates miss the opportunity to explain how their skills transfer from one experience to the next. If you can learn to communicate these transferable skills, you will set yourself up for success. You might be asking yourself, what are the most desirable transferable skills, or what skills are employers looking for? Well, when employers are asked what skills or attributes they look for on resumes that they receive, these are the top skills that they pick. As you look through this list, you'll hopefully notice that you've developed many of these skills and probably developed it through your virtual exchange. So through your virtual exchange, you developed lots of skills that were on that list. And today we're going to talk in depth about 4 of those skills. The first is cross-cultural communication. Then we're going to talk about teamwork, then technology skills, and last, problem solving. We know there are many more skills that you developed that we can't get into specifically today, but you will learn how to talk about those other skills too. We will go more in depth about each of these 4 skills in the coming slides. The definitions of the skills that we go through and the information that we just went through in the previous slide come from the NACE organization. The NACE organization is an organization that connects colleges with employers. Let's start off with cross-cultural communication skills. Well, what are they? They're called lots of different things. We use many different words to describe communication skills or cross-cultural communication skills. Sometimes job listings will say intercultural communication, or sometimes it will mention intercultural competency. But this all boils down to the ability to value, respect, and learn from diverse cultures, races, ages, genders, sexual orientations, and religions. The individual demonstrates the ability to articulate thoughts and ideas clearly and effectively in written and oral forms with those from different cultures. So if that's what cross-cultural communication skills are, what are some examples of virtual exchange experiences that developed this skill? Well, one example is the CELIA program, the CELIA virtual exchange called the Connect program. So in this program, students participated in virtual intercultural dialogue focused on specific social issues. And through this program, participants gained skills, including active listening in a group, gaining empathy, storytelling, confronting cultural stereotypes, listening across cultural difference, interacting proactively in a diverse group, and all of these describe communication skills. Another example is the Into-Gate program from WDI. So in this program, students formed international teams to identify social challenges and create entrepreneurial solutions. So the communication skills developed and gained during this program included communicating on a team with different cultural approaches, work processes, and expectations. And students also communicated with each other about their communities, cultures, and daily lives. And through that sharing and that learning, continued to develop these cross-cultural communication skills. A second skill developed during virtual exchanges, or that very often developed during virtual exchanges, are teamwork skills. They are building collaborative relationships with colleagues and customers representing diverse cultures, races, ages, genders, religions, lifestyles, and viewpoints. So the individual is able to work within a team structure and can negotiate and manage conflict. So some examples of virtual exchange experiences that developed this skill was the IREX Global Solution Sustainability Challenge. In this program, participants worked on international teams to identify sustainability challenges and to innovate solutions. Participants practiced teamwork by managing a complex project development cycle virtually with multiple team members in 2 different countries. Projects were very complex, there were multiple team roles, and everybody had to understand and learn to understand group dynamics. So again, all of these smaller descriptions of the program are descriptions of how the skill of teamwork was being developed. And again, SOLIA, the Connect program, is a really good example of developing teamwork skills. Through the group process, participants had to share cultural issues that had an impact on their lives, and through consensus building, decide on one theme to guide their dialogues. The small dialogue group practiced teamwork skills, including support, active listening, and respect for different team members' experiences. The third skill we want to talk about are technology skills. This is a bigger group of lots of different, maybe smaller skills. So again, it can be called many different things. Things like computer skills, ICT, or information and communication technology skills, or digital technology skills. Many different jobs or employers will call these skills different things, but the way you talk about them should be the same. So what are some technology skills? Technology skills leverage existing digital technologies, or people with technology skills leverage existing digital technologies ethically and efficiently to solve problems, complete tasks, and accomplish goals. The individual demonstrates effective adaptability to new and emerging technologies. Adaptability to new technologies, that sounds like a virtual exchange participant. So some good examples of this skill being developed was at the virtual exchange program at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln. So participants in this program were asked to collaboratively learn through a paired university course with an international classroom. And as a part of the course, students had to manage time outside of class to work with program partners using digital technology. This included scheduling communications times and troubleshooting platforms. So students developed digital technology skills when they learned how to use these multiple platforms to communicate. Another great example is the Dialect program from World Learning. In this program, students were asked to participate in global leadership and education activities. In addition, they were asked to explore their international partners' cultures through informal contacts and in virtual groups. And so participants developed significant self and time management skills and skills required to navigate international collaboration and communication technologies. So those skills developed to navigate those technologies really increased those participants' technology skills. And the last specific skill we want to talk about today is problem-solving skills. We all hear a lot about problem-solving skills, but what's a good definition? So the definition of problem-solving skills is the ability to exercise sound reasoning, to analyze issues, make decisions, and overcome problems. The individual is able to obtain, interpret, and use knowledge, facts, and data in this process, and may demonstrate originality and inventiveness. So examples of virtual exchange experiences and how this skill was developed include, again, the M2Gate program at WDI. So again, participants in this program worked on a team. They brought their own expertise and backgrounds together and shared solutions to problems that affected their communities. So they used problem-solving techniques to develop their solutions, and by using those techniques, they increased their problem-solving skills. I think almost all virtual exchange participants report overcoming technology challenges by brainstorming solutions. For example, if the platform students are communicating through doesn't work, participants will identify another communication method. This is really common, and this is a specific practical example of problem-solving skills. So again, when you go to apply to take your next step, whether that's to get into grad school or to get your next job, these skills might be called something else in a job description or in an industry. For example, teamwork might be called collaboration skills. And so that's something to keep in mind as we move forward. But also, you should keep in mind that you have lots of other skills in addition to the 4 we've talked about. And it's important to do some deep reflection about what the skill is and how you used it in the past, including during your virtual exchange. When preparing this webinar and talking to Caroline, who helped develop the content, she shared that oftentimes when she sees a job description, she'll go through and highlight each skill and then think about what experience she could share with examples. And so on this slide, there are a few steps that will help you as you think about how you have other skills than the ones we focused on previously. So thinking about when you've used that skill in your past experience, or you can try talking to your teammates from your virtual exchange, or coworkers, or your teachers, anyone, if you're unsure whether you used a specific skill. You can also ask other people for examples. Are there other skills that you are thinking of that you don't know how you can use your virtual exchange experience to highlight? Well, you can send them in to us in a question through the Q&A box below. So now that we've learned what transferable skills are and why they're important, and we've learned about specific skills you've developed, let's think about your personal goals. So what is your goal for your next step? Your goal will determine what skills you stress and highlight during your process of talking about your experience. So do you want to go to college or graduate school? Well, think about what admissions officers or selection committees are looking for. What about your experience, your virtual exchange experience or others, might be particularly relevant for an admissions officer reviewing your application? Or was this experience relevant to your desired field of study? If so, are there likely other skills or competencies that you want to highlight as well? Well, what if your goal is different? What if you're trying to get a job or change careers? You should think about what recruiters or managers, bosses, think about what they're looking for. What about this experience might be particularly relevant for an employer looking at your resume? Did you gain skills that are relevant to your desired career goals? You won't talk about the exact same skills to each goal that you have. If you're applying to college to study information technology, for example, you might talk about your digital technology skills more. Alternatively, if you are applying to an entry-level communications coordinator role, you might focus on your intercultural communication skills more. You'll have to change your answers based on what your goals are. And how do you do that? Well, to reach those goals, you'll need to learn and practice how to explain and talk about these skills from your virtual exchange in multiple different ways. And we're going to talk about 3 of those ways today. First, when you write applications. Second, when you create resumes. And third, when you're discussing your experience in interviews. So we'll talk about each of these and look at examples in the coming slides. So first, essays for college or graduate school applications. When you have to fill out these applications, the essay portion is where you highlight your experience and your skills. So when you're writing an essay for college or graduate school, how you write about your experience is really, really important. So to write an effective essay when applying to schools, always brainstorm and create an outline first. You'll include lots of different parts from your background when writing your essay. But when you write about your experiences, you should think about the following questions. How has this experience influenced your decision to pursue your chosen field of interest? And then what skills did you learn or gain from your virtual exchange? And how do those relate to what you hope to study? And a third question could be, how did you grow as a result of your virtual exchange? What did you learn? How has this affected what you've chosen to study? So you can use that first question listed here to help you talk about many different experiences that you might want to include in your essay. The second and the third are relevant to your virtual exchange. Your virtual exchange is a type of experience that many different skills or a lot of growth can be identified from. So this is a really rich experience to use in an essay. So let's look at an example. This is an example of a paragraph from an admissions essay or from a personal statement. So I'm going to read it, and then I'll point out a couple of important parts of this sample. So the application sample goes like this. One experience that encouraged me to grow was a virtual exchange program I participated in with an organization called World Learning. During this program, other students and I participated in a virtual intercultural exchange focused on specific problems in our communities. My group was made up of young people from many different countries and backgrounds. I had never spoken or worked with so many different people. We created a small community and learned a lot from various perspectives. I learned how to communicate with others who were different than me. The program really opened my eyes to looking at the world from a different lens. I think this program challenged me and helped me to grow, and I look forward to bringing that sense of open-minded collaboration to your institution. So in that sample, there are a couple of important parts or a couple of important phrases. So I used the term helped me to grow. This shows when we're applying to our graduate school, we want to show how experiences from our past have developed our skills or made us the person that we are today. So phrases like helped me to grow and then showing how that program helped us to grow and what ways specifically is really important. I also explained what the program is. A lot of people don't know what you're talking about, so you need to give enough details so they can have the appropriate context. I also explained how it helped me. I mentioned specific things like communication skills, cross-cultural skills, collaboration. So those are really important. It's really important to highlight what specific skills you grew or how this program helped you. And also talking about the transferability. So at the end, I say, I look forward to bringing that sense of collaboration to your institution. So that's me explicitly saying that these skills transfer. So the second form we want to talk about is resume writing. If you're applying to a job, you'll need a resume. Resume rules vary by country, but how you explain your experience will remain mostly the same. So the essential element of resume writing is how you describe your experiences. And on US resumes, this is often in a bullet point format. So to write an effective bullet point, you want to use the following formula, which includes three different parts or three different elements. So the first is an action verb, then details, and then the goal or the result. So an action verb. An action verb is a verb that showcases what you actively did. So it's important to use verbs like coordinated or communicated or collaborated, and avoid vague verbs or passive verbs like worked with or assisted with or helped. The second part is details. What did you do? Think about who, what, where, when, and how. If this is difficult for you to write out, sometimes explaining what you did out loud is helpful if you are stuck, and then you can go back and write the words out into a sentence. The last part is the goal or the result. Through this experience, what were you trying to accomplish? And then what were the results? What was the end product? So let's look at an example. The top box breaks down the different parts of the formula, the action verb, the details, and then the result. For a specific example, in this case, the IRX Global Solution Sustainability Challenge. And the second box shows how this is formatted as a bullet for an experience on a standard US resume. Usually there are multiple bullets underneath one experience. So it's also important to remember that you should check out the standard professional format in your country. It might be more in paragraphs or it might be in a different format, but for today we're going to look at this example. So we list collaborated with 5 team members through virtual video chats in Jordan to create a sustainable solution for the tourism industry, including a description, prototype, and investment pitch presentation. So it's really easy to see all the different components or parts of the formula listed out, the action verb, the details, and then the results. It's important to think about how you might have to change this example if your virtual exchange was different. So of course, there would be a different title, company, location, but what additional information would you put underneath your experience? For example, if the organization you're applying to is looking for problem-solving skills, how could you craft a bullet formula or a bullet underneath your resume to highlight your problem-solving skills? Just remember that the way to describe your experience is transferable no matter what format you're using. Let's look at a second example. So in this example, the action verb is communicated, and then the details are listed with 7 international young people and 8 virtual dialogues focused on youth civic engagement. And then the result, resulting in multicultural learning and professional relationships. The bottom box shows how this would be formatted on a standard US resume. So now that you've conquered writing about your virtual exchange, we should turn to speaking. Communicating about your experience orally is just as important to help you accomplish your career goal. Interviewing is a part of most job searches and many college and graduate school processes. So to answer any interview question, it is important to give an example of your past experience. Using your virtual exchange is a great way to answer these questions. So a great method to use is the STAR method: situation, task, action, result. This method is an easy-to-use formula to help you answer any interview question. It is very similar to telling a story with a beginning, a middle, and an end. So here are the pieces of the STAR method explained. So first, the situation. When you answer a question, you should set up the situation you were in. Provide the interviewer with enough context to understand what was going on. Specifics are important. This answers the question, what was it, or what was happening? Next is the task. Be clear about what the actual task is that you had to accomplish, even if it was in a group setting. What should you have done? Next is the action. What action did you take? This should be the focus of the answer. Don't gloss over this part. This part of the interview this part of your response should answer the question, what did you specifically do? And then the last part is the result. What happened at the end? Your story is not complete without an ending. So what was the result of your action? To prep for any interview, you could practice writing your experience out using the STAR method, and then follow that up by practicing out loud. So let's look at an example. Here's a really common interview question, and we wrote an answer using the STAR method. So this is a very common interview question that you can always use your virtual exchange experience to answer. So the question is, tell me about a time when you had to communicate and work on a team. And so this is how I would answer it if I was using the STAR method. So first I would think about the situation. Well, I participated in a virtual exchange during my junior spring semester. In this program, students formed international teams to identify social challenges and create entrepreneurial solutions. So in that part, the situation, I'm giving the context for what I was doing. And then I turn to my task. What should we have been focused on? So our main focus was communicating with our international virtual team and accomplishing multiple tasks towards achieving our goal. I contributed as my team's US leader. So then we turn to the action. What did I specifically do? I tried to get to know my international partners as well as I could. I asked questions, shared information about myself, tried to establish some communication norms and ways to work together. We had to make some adjustments for cultural differences, but in the end, I was really proud of the project we put together. And then again, the story is not finished without an ending, so let's finish it up with the result. So not only did we complete our project, but I gained multiple skills, including communicating with an international team, problem solving, and working with different technology platforms. So hopefully this works. Hopefully you understand this in the context of an interview. If you are thinking of different questions, be sure to send in some questions using the chat box below. If you have gotten an interview question before that you didn't know how to answer, or if you're thinking of a common interview question that you would like for us to explain how to use the STAR method with, go ahead and send that in below. I'll give you another example. So again, this is a very common interview question. The question is, tell me about a problem or challenge that you had to overcome. This question is asked in almost every interview because employers want to know how you deal with challenges. And so again, let's break it down into the situation, task, action, and result. So I recently participated in a virtual exchange program. In this program, students were asked to participate in global leadership and an education course. In addition, we explored our international partners' cultures through informal contact and virtual meetings. It was my responsibility to make a connection with my international partner and schedule multiple interactions with my virtual group members so I could learn about their daily life. The problem was I could not seem to get anyone to respond to my emails after our first meeting. So at first I was frustrated, but I thought I should try to solve the problem on my own. I sent a follow-up email and I messaged my contact using WhatsApp. I also let my program coordinator know just so they could provide some support if necessary. So after I sent the WhatsApp message, my partner got back to me and we were able to schedule a follow-up meeting. They hadn't received any of my emails. So I learned that instead of just giving up, I should be persistent and look for multiple ways to solve my problem. So in this example, you see again, I'm using the STAR method. Situation to set up the context, the task, what was I supposed to be doing? Then I talked about the action. What did I do to overcome that challenge? And then I listed the results. So in the end, what ended up happening and how did I solve that problem? So that wraps up the main part of our webinar. So using your virtual exchange skills for career success. So let's think about what we learned here. We covered the importance of using your virtual exchange experience in your career path. We talked about transferable skills and skills from your exchange. We talked about your goals and how your skills can help you reach those goals and how you can connect those previous experiences to those goals. And we also talked about specific examples of how you can talk about your virtual exchange experience in applications for graduate school and college, in resumes, and then when you answer interview questions. So on this slide, we also developed some additional resources that can help you with your applications, resume writing, and interviewing. There are links here, and they're also included on the document that we created for you, a picture of which is right here to the left. Again, you can find a link to that document in the email that we sent you with today. And you can use it to work on your own career success examples. We've written out a lot of the information that we used in the webinar today. If you can't find what you're looking for here, don't give up. You can always try Googling, web searches, or contacting a local resource through your school or community. When I was talking to Caroline about this webinar, she mentioned that many schools have career support resources that are underutilized. So you should reach out to the places that you're connected with, a school, a program, or in your community to see what kind of career support resources that they have. And in addition to those in-person resources, there are a million resources online now that you can use, and now that you know how to approach this challenge of thinking of connecting skills with experience, those resources that you find online are a little bit easier to use. So now we want to spend about, about 10 minutes, maybe answering some questions that you sent to us during the webinar. So my colleague Haley has been corresponding with some of you during the webinar and recording the questions you sent in. And she's going to read me some of those questions and I'll try to answer them.
Great. So the first question is, in addition to the skills that we mentioned during this webinar, what are the skills that you personally consider indispensable to build a good resume and launch a perfect career?
Oh, that's a really good question. And maybe it's difficult for a person to answer because everyone has different past experiences and everyone has different skills that they're really good at. So I think, in addition to the skills that we mentioned today, I think a lot of students in virtual exchanges develop leadership skills, develop flexibility and adaptability skills, and then adapt interpersonal skills. So I think that those are all, sometimes people call those soft skills because they're skills that are difficult to like test. But I think that those, and then the problem solving skills, the communication skills we mentioned, those are all really important to highlight and are really transferable to almost any experience. So something that we didn't talk about that much today were some specific skills that are related to the content of the program that you learned, or maybe what you studied. So for example, earlier I talked about the WDI M2 GATE program, and that program focused on entrepreneurship and creating entrepreneurial solutions to challenges. And so in that program, students gained a lot of really specific entrepreneurship related skills. So business skills, developing like a business plan, pitching a business, or pitching a solution. So those are really specific skills. So I'm sure in each virtual exchange experience and in many of the educational experiences that you've had in the past, you've developed those specific content skills. So another good example is with the SOLIA program. The SOLIA virtual exchange program is set up as a dialogue. So that really increases communication skills. And so you could highlight the fact that you know how to facilitate a dialogue, or you know how to participate in a dialogue. That's a really important skill. Or for example, the Global Solutions Sustainability Challenge developed a lot of like specific sustainability focused content skills during their program. So there are lots of different skills that were developed, and really it's just important for you. The last thing on this question is how you market your skills or how you talk about your skills should depend on the opportunity that you're applying for. So you should really read the description and see what skills are they looking for, and then how can you use your experience to talk about those specific skills. So even if they don't mention, for example, my flexibility or adaptability skills on that job announcement, but they talk about communication skills a lot, I probably will talk less about my flexibility skills and talk more about those communication skills, because that's what they're actually looking for. So it might matter less like what skills you have, and might matter more what skills they're looking for.
Great. So the next question is actually about some of the programs that we discussed during today's webinar, and to learn more information. And so to learn more information about these programs, you can actually visit our website at www.stevensinitiative.org/projects, and you'll see a list of many of the different projects that we've funded. And if you have a specific question about one of the projects or how you can get involved, you can reach out to Kyle directly. The next question is about whether or not an elevator speech about a virtual exchange experience is necessary, and if so, how you would prepare that elevator speech and what kind of details and kind of skills building aspects you would recommend including.
Oh, that's a great question too. So I think sometimes something we didn't talk a lot about today is networking. And so I think when people talk about elevator pitches, which just for anybody who doesn't know, an elevator pitch is a really short description of an experience that you could give to someone, let's say in less than a minute. And usually people talk about elevator pitches or those kind of things in a networking sense. So if you go somewhere and you're meeting someone and you're trying to increase the number of contacts you have, the number of people you know in a specific community or in a specific industry, we talk about elevator pitches. So I think elevator pitches are a lot like the situation part of the STAR method when we're answering interview questions. So, and this is something, I think elevator pitches are something you can practice, and I think it also just takes time to develop that. So if I was going to talk about a virtual exchange experience in an elevator pitch, I would probably just look back to, I'm gonna cycle back really quick to these two examples that I listed here, because it basically just explains the program in a couple of sentences. So for example, this one, I participated in a virtual exchange during my junior spring semester. In this program, students formed international teams to identify social challenges and create entrepreneurial solutions. In our class, we work together using technology, communicating with each other to solve that problem. I think that is a short enough example or a short enough elevator pitch, but with enough context that someone who doesn't know what a virtual exchange is could understand what had happened. This other example, so I recently participated in a virtual exchange program. In this program, students were asked to participate in global leadership and education courses. In addition, we explored our international partners' cultures through informal contact and virtual meetings. If you wanted to add some more context to this, you could say a virtual exchange program is a program where students from different places connect with each other to learn collaboratively and to talk to each other and to share and communicate.
So there was a question about what we mean when we talk about marketing yourself and how you can use that as a skill when talking about your virtual exchange, especially for people who don't have a lot of confidence when they're talking about themselves. Do you have any recommendations about ways to talk about yourself and your various skills?
Sure. So when we think about goals and we think about our experiences and connecting our experience to our goals, I think, of course, the issue of marketing yourself comes up. Some people don't feel very comfortable marketing themselves. They think it sounds like you're being like proud or have too much pride or you're bragging. But really, in the situations that we're talking about today, for either graduate school or college or trying to get a job, this is the part of our lives where we're allowed to talk about ourselves and be proud of what we've accomplished. So really thinking about the fact that, let's say if it's for a job you're trying to get, so this company or this organization is trying to find someone to do a job. And you've looked and you think that you have the skills necessary to accomplish that job. If you have those skills and you've done your research and you've highlighted and you've thought about how you can explain your experience and how that experience makes you a fit for that job, then that should give you the confidence to go in there and say, this is what I've done, this is what you're asking for, and I'm a perfect candidate because of these different reasons. So I actually think going through some of the exercises we did today, highlighting the different skills people are looking for, thinking about your experiences and how those experiences gave you those skills that people are looking for, and doing all of your research and your preparation should give you the confidence to go in there and say, I know what you're looking for, and I know how my experience prepared me to be that person. This is also really difficult, and I think everyone should know that those interviews or application and admissions processes are really nerve-wracking or can make people feel uncomfortable. But knowing that it's the same for everybody hopefully makes you feel a little bit more confident that everybody's in the same boat and everybody's trying. And at least now you have some skills that you can go back and say, this is my experience, this is what they're looking for, and you know how to connect the two. So that should give you a little bit more confidence moving forward.
Great. So I know that this is discussed during the webinar, but could you please summarize the biggest points about including your virtual exchange program in a resume?
Yeah, so let me go back to that slide. So basically on a resume is a list of your experiences. And you kind of divide it up into categories. You have your educational experience, you have your professional experience, or you have your work experience. And so basically what you're trying to do on a resume is show what experiences you've had and what skills those experiences developed in you. And so the way you use your virtual exchange experience on a resume is you think about what the job is looking for and what skills they're looking for, and then you think, what skills that they're looking for can I list under my virtual exchange experience? So, and you do that in a way where you use this bullet point formula. So if we look at this example from the Global Solutions Sustainability Challenge, I say, collaborated with 5 team members through virtual video chats in Jordan to create a sustainable solution for the tourism industry, including a description, prototype, and investment pitch presentation. So this person probably wrote that bullet point because the job description was looking for someone who can collaborate or who can work on a team, someone who knows something about sustainability, someone who knows something about the tourism industry. Maybe they're looking for skills related to like business proposals or pitching. And so in that job description, if all of those skills were requested, or they say, this is what we're looking for, then this person works backwards and identifies those skills that they developed in their virtual exchange and how they can highlight them here. So really what your resume is doing, it's creating a way that you can say, this is my past experience, this is what you're looking for, and in this experience, these are the skills I developed that make me right for that job.
Great. So before I read the next question, I just want to remind everyone that we have a few more minutes. So if you have a question that hasn't been answered yet, please be sure to send it in now via the Q&A chat box at the bottom of your screen. The next question is, if you could use an example of the STAR method, or like the interview response method, about how someone may have worked on a team in a project where a member of that team didn't contribute or work well with that team, and how you improved that problem or that challenge.
Yeah, so that's a really good, I'm gonna cycle through, to the interview. And so again, the STAR method: situation, task, action, and results. So a common interview question could probably be, can you tell me about a time when it was challenging to work with a team member? So you could say, so you could say, yeah, so I did a virtual exchange program, which is a program where people from 2 different places collaborate on a project virtually using communication technology. So my program was called the Global Solution Sustainability Challenge, and it was provided by an organization called IREX. And so what we were trying to do, working with a team, develop a solution to a sustainability issue in the tourism industry. And so we were set up on virtual teams, and we all had different roles. So my role was the project manager on the US side. So I was working with all the US-based participants, trying to get all of their ideas lined up, make sure everybody was heard, following through on their tasks. And then I was communicating with our corresponding team, our partner team in Jordan. And so one challenge that I had was that one of my teammates here in the United States wasn't completing her task. She was supposed to be working on our pitch in our PowerPoint presentation, and she was just missing all of these deadlines. And that was really challenging because I didn't know how to exactly make sure she got our work done. And so what I ended up doing, I set up a side conversation with her, and I had a conversation and I explained why it was important. I asked what the issue was, if she was just overwhelmed with other work, or how I could help. She said that she had gotten a little bit behind, but that she was back on track. And that she would turn in the product in a couple of weeks. And so I said, okay, I'll follow up with you. And so that, parenthetically here, that was the action I took. And so now I want to talk about the result. And so the result was, after our conversation, she turned in her PowerPoint presentation. I followed up with her and made sure she was still doing okay and had everything she needed to continue. And then we had a successful pitch presentation. So that's an example of how I would communicate like that. You really want to show, again, what the situation was and what your task was kind of as the big point. And then the action part and the task part, you could also describe what the challenge was. And then the action part could be like, what action did you take to resolve that challenge? But then make sure to include the result at the end. So it was a successful result, or even if it wasn't a successful result, I think that's fine as long as you made an effort.
Great. So I think that picking an example of what a company could be, one question is how to respond to an interview question using your virtual exchange experience when discussing how you will help the company meet their goals or targets.
Yeah. So the interview question would then, I'm just going to check with you, Haley, do you think this is the right question? So the question from the interviewer would be, can you tell me about a time when you have helped worked in a place where you had specific targets that you had to reach, and how could you do that here? Yeah. So this really, again, always depends on your virtual exchange experience. And so, but in any program that we do, there are always some goals. So I think sometimes those goals are easier to put a number to than others. But I think you can always think about what's the goal of your program, and then try to quantify that. So was the goal of our program that we would participate in 8 different dialogues, or was our program that we would put together a 30-minute presentation, or was the goal of our program that we would complete a collaborative project? So think about that goal at the end, and then again, use the STAR method, give the situation, talk about the task. So we had to accomplish that goal, and then talk about what your specific role was in achieving that goal. And then at the result, when you talk about how you achieved that goal, say we created the 30-minute presentation that we're given positive feedback about that presentation from our program coordinators. And then right there, after you talk about the result, you can always take the next step and say, and this applies to the position I'm going to take with your organization, because you want people who can produce results according to goals that you set. This is a specific example of how I achieved a goal that was set for me and the positive feedback I received about me achieving that goal.
So I think the last question, and we know the answer to this, which was, are there going to be weekly meetings like this? The answer is no. But do you think that, to wrap up, you can talk about different aspects of our alumni program and other opportunities for engagement? Yeah.
I wish that there could be weekly meetings like this. I actually enjoyed talking to you all today. I thought this was really fun, and I know that lots of alumni out there need information like this. So what we do want to be doing is providing more opportunities like this in the future. So in a way that you can help us with that, I'll actually just go to our last slide. So in a couple of minutes, when I close the webinar, it'll send you to a survey. And in that survey, you can give us information about what kind of programming you would like us to talk about. So today we talked about using your experience for career success. Maybe you want to learn about something else. So be sure to contribute that here. Another thing that you should know is, like I said at the beginning, we plan on having learning opportunities like this. Not weekly, but we definitely will have more in the future. And so make sure to follow us on social media, connect with your virtual exchange program that you went through, and check your email for opportunities like this, sign up for them, and participate. The more participation we have, the more opportunities like this we'll be able to accomplish. It's also important to share this with other people who did your virtual exchange with you that might not have been here today. So we plan on posting a video of this webinar soon, and we'll share that link with you so you can watch it again to practice in case you missed anything, but you can also share it with your fellow participants. So that's something that you can do to help us out. So in short, not weekly, but we look forward to sharing more learning opportunities like this soon. So, and I think I'll use that to wrap up. That's all the time we had for this webinar, and so we want to say thank you so much for attending. So when we end the webinar, you'll be directed to a survey. We'll also be sending out that survey link in an email very soon. And so it's really quick, less than 3 minutes, and it will really your feedback will really help out as we plan future webinars. So again, please fill it out. This helps us create programming that you want. So we hope you learned something today. Thank you again so much for attending, and we hope to see you at our next learning opportunity.